He opens his eyes, looks directly into the spotlight, and hits the crash symbol, coming to the conclusion that such a world simply could never exist. When we wrap up our rehearsal and start unplugging, Dickie can't help himself from turning all the knobs on the Marshalls up to 11 and slashing Eruption. Passersby stop on the sidewalk to look through the showcase window, cupping their hands to catch a glimpse of the fire brewing inside and long to reach out, allowing themselves to be consumed by the passionate flames. The index finger on his right hand pointed up to the heavens, the fingers on his left hammer and pull off the fretboard of his Strat infinitely, and I'm astonished that Dickie Hernandez isn't a rock god already. Walking through the violet curtain after packing up the caddy, we join Fooky at the bar. Sipping pints of Guinness with shamrocks etched into the foam, Dickie asks him how it went, and Fook gives an enthusiastic thumbs up. He catches himself and quietly points towards Megumi, now laughing into her phone and asking the painting crew whether some specks are intentional or not. As we sit at the bar, Fook slips into his legal jive talk again, as if not trying to communicate at all, but to manipulate. He explains how he has once again worked his magic without saying exactly how. "I've got her right where I want her," he insists. "She just needs a little bit more convincing." While this causes Hank's eyes to roll and Dickie's brow to furrow, the three of us share a brief yet knowing glance. As Megumi makes her way to the bar, Fook whispers on the down low, "Here she comes." And the way he says under his breath, "Oh, by the way, don't say anything about Gonzo," reaffirms our skepticism. Hanging up the phone, Megumi's sharp eyes shift between the four of us with an amused look of surrender, making a visual connection with each set of eyeballs. Dickie's hand wearing a stainless steel onyx ring and a full set of teeth marks, and Hank's black Doc Martens that walk with a limp along the hardwood floor. On the outside, she's the epitome of professionalism. On the inside, however, she's thinking about all the sponsors threatening to pull out, making a calculated decision whether she should put her life in the hands of this rock and roll band. The buzzing of Fooky's phone on the table breaks the silence of this solemn moment. The face he makes mocks the idea that it would be overly formal to simply say, "Excuse me." She nods when he says, "I'll be right back, my shit's blowing up." Then, watching as he shuffles off into the men's room, Megumi lets a deep sigh escape. Shifting her eyes between the three of us, she asks without smiling, "You boys didn't read that contract, did you?" Gauging by the stumped look on our faces, she searches for the English word to say there's a reason they call it fine print. Then she searches for a diplomatic way to say that it's not her she's worried about. "Every Eden has its snake," she says, which has me remembering the gypsy's dire warning. When she's ready, Megumi looks up to find Dickie shyly glancing at her from behind his pint glass. He takes a deliberate sip, leaving a foam mustache behind, achieving the beginning of a grin. It was then that Dickie leaned in and touched her hand. A look of affinity shone through his eyes when he told her he'd read all the articles written about her. An anxious, strychnine-laced chill ran through me. Then he said softly, "Some of the articles talked about your sister." "It's so embarrassing," she said, covering her shy laugh with the palm of her hand. Her purple rain-colored fingernails rested on her bottom lip when I got the first in a series of chilling visions. I can't read the elaborate Asian characters on the Hello Kitty photo booth, but a young girl is bent down, navigating the control panel of a touchscreen in her navy blue uniform. All the attention I'm getting. Megumi is twirling her hair with her head tilted bashfully to the side. My family back in Japan can't believe I'm in the news. Again. Her mauve eyeshadow lightly accentuated the lines of her face when she softly closed her eyes, and after a pause, an escaping laugh broke the tension. She shook out her full black hair and admitted that she couldn't bring herself to sign any of Fooky's amateur contracts. She tells us, almost apologetically, that she hopes this isn't a deal breaker. Despite all the heat she's taking because of us, she assures us that there is still no one she would rather play the Halloween Monster Mash than the Merry Pranksters. She doesn't need to remind us that she has plenty of options, but she does anyway. "Look," she says, "I have some very special guests coming in from out of town this weekend. Why don't you guys play a few songs and we'll see how things go? You don't have to wear suits or anything, but stay out of trouble. Try to not prove all the crazy trolls right. If you boys can manage to get your shit together, you just might be able to pull this off." 2 shots and a Guinness later, Dickie is telling her about holy gun smoke. As the last grains of sand are passing through the neck of the hourglass, Olivia rushes up to urgently hand her a phone, whispering, "It's young Jamie from Joe Rogan's show." We tell her we'll see her this weekend, and she covers the phone to smile and tell us, "Great, Fooky has all the details." The 3 of us share a look of acknowledged potential. Like Megumi saw in Cooper since day 1, she sees that same potential in us, and she's imploring us to begin seeing it in ourselves as well. Hank checks the time on his phone and announces that we have to get going. "Where the hell is the big fella? I got business to take care of." Passing Carlos holding a paintbrush, then Fooky returning from the bathroom, Megumi nods at both of them politely from her phone. They smile back, but then idle near the tall four-tops without coming over to the bar. Leaning against the red pillar, they talk with informal body language, and I imagine Fook saying something inappropriate about Jasmine. From the bar, Dickie shouts over the mariachi music, "Yo, Fook, we're out, man." But now Fook is leaning in close with a curious look upon his face while Carlos continues inching further backwards. Finishing our pints, the 3 of us are standing to go. Dickie sets down his glass firmly on the counter and is going on about what a legend Megs is. But I can't help but notice Fooky's fists clenched while he's standing by the red pillar. Dickie is really starting to visualize this like he's caught the fever. His enthusiasm is contagious when he says Hank wouldn't have to be on the run from the Irish, the Mexican, or the Japanese mafias if we managed not to screw all this up. He then turns to me and tells me I wouldn't have to end up being some nutty professor trying to bang all the sorority girls. We laugh, but when he says, "When people ask us what we do for a living, we can say, we're the Merry Pranksters and we fuck bad bitches." Leaving that last thought hanging in the air like a smoke ring, Fook stands at the foot of the red pillar, squinting at Carlos and patting his shoulder in a gesture of appreciation. In the absence of information, conspiracies will reign, and some of them will be true. If Hank was being honest with himself, he could have foreseen which direction Carlos and Fook's conversation would surely lead. And if he honestly didn't want Fook to find out the small part he may have played in the saga of Joey and Demeen, he didn't try very hard. "Yo, Biggie, we got a split," Hank shouts for a second time. It's then that Carlos looks over at him as if he'd realized he'd just gone and spoiled the surprise. It was not the initial look of confusion on Fook's face that was remarkable. Once it hit him that the conspiracy nut turned out to, in fact, be a conspirer, the expression on his asymmetrical face dropped. Now, the last man in St. Louis to know, knew. He gave the first few stages of loss a moment to work through. Disbelief, rage, and the betrayal that comes when you realize the only thing worse than being wrong was having Hank prove you were wrong. No, the remarkable part was how quickly his brain processed this new information. In no time at all, he was able to convince himself that he was not wrong. And if you look at it that way, he had actually been right all along. He zipped up the jacket of his Adidas tracksuit, finished his drink, and smiled. Looking across the bar, he shouted, not in the form of a question, but as a bold statement, "So, Hank, it was you."